Hi everyone, it's a great pleasure to be talking to you all today at today's Trend Summit. I'm Charles and I'm going to be introducing you to the top 10 trends of influence for 26-27. And for Trend Hub subscribers, I'm also going to be pointing you to the supporting granular evidence and the speakers that are going to be highlighting some of the trends that we're going to be exploring in today's session. And it's my great pleasure once again to welcome Shakifa, TFP's Head of Insight, who's going to join me to have some discussions around the trends as we go through. So welcome, Shakifa.
Thank you, Charles. Hi, everyone. Really excited to be here today.
But before we do that, if you're new to our annual trend predictions, you might be asking yourself, how do we do this and why is this so important? Certainly, it's our belief that evaluating and acting on future trends is absolutely critical. Building future trends into your strategic planning, your innovation pipelines, your renovation pipelines. It's a prerequisite to, of course, maintaining competitive advantage, but also relevance and also mitigating risk. And we believe that no one should be intimidated by the future. We need to understand what's happening now and into the future so that all of us can harness its potential for growth, because the future is all about opportunity and growth. And our expertise lays in the identification of the patterns and the shifts in behaviours that anticipate change, and really importantly, why they're happening, so that we can make expert informed predictions for food and drink. Everything from the higher level global drivers and social and cultural trends right down through the food and beverage mega trends and all the evidence that supports that, the cuisines, the flavors, the ingredients, and of course, much, much more. And we do this through our IP-based research methodologies that in essence, it's the marriage of two things: global intelligence and human wisdom, to decode literally millions of qualitative signals of change across food and drink, investing over 26,000 hours a year, applying that contextual industry understanding, food industry domain experience, but also culture, creativity, emotion, ethics, intuition, stress testing, and an enormous amount of critical debate to that raw intelligence to not only identify the trends, but really importantly, why they're manifesting. And this work, it manifests itself actually across all of the work that we do at the Food People. But today, at our annual Trend Summit, it provides that strategic trend and foresight framework that's anchored in the why, ensuring that you are all best placed to flip the trends of today and the foresights of tomorrow into your opportunities for the future, and ultimately the shifted future of food and drink. So that's a little bit about how we do what we do. So, just to kick things off today, we're going to start big picture, setting out the 30-year horizon, the 2025 to 2055 long-term disruptive forces work that we've done. This is a tiny an excerpt from a new content stream that will be released at the end of this year for our Trend to Premium clients. So if we look ahead now from here to 2055, we're not simply talking about the next product cycle, we're talking about the next era of systemic transformation. And the food and drink sector is really standing at that intersection of climate, of technology, changing in demographics and geopolitics, forces that will collide to reshape everything from how we grow, how we consume our food into the future. So the next 30 years are going to be about rebuilding resilience into our food system that is already under immense strain. So if we unpack some of what's coming up against the 6 different dimensions of disruption that are on the screen: political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental. I'm just going to call out some key headlines, really, starting with political. It's certainly our view that we're shifting from food trade to food power. Food is once again that lever, as it has been in the past, of global power. Geopolitical conflict and trade fragmentation are among some of the most immediate threats. Nations, many are turning inward, pursuing food sovereignty and strategic reserves, tariffs, taxes that are and will in the future redefine global flows. And for business, the era of that sort of just-in-time supply is almost giving way to a just-in-case food security. What we need to do is navigate a world where both food is both diplomacy and sanction at the same time. From an economic perspective, there's a lot of volatility and almost sort of unequal abundance. Instability is the new normal. climate, conflict, cost pressures, they're all colliding. Consumers at the same time want ethical and affordable food, that almost impossible balance. Tech and automation will widen divides between those who innovate and those countries that perhaps get left behind. So we need to consider that context as well. From a social perspective, diet is now an economic risk. Poor nutrition is driving disease and debt and division. The wealthy will bio-optimize. Others stay trapped in food deserts, a split where abundance and deprivation kind of coexist. And by mid-century, humanity will face that paradox of sort of undernutrition and overnutrition in the same space. So a fundamental test of social cohesion. From a technological point of view, there's huge amounts clearly happening in technology. One of the things that we see is this great agri-tech convergence. AI, biotech, automation are reshaping every link almost from genome to grocery. But concentration of power in a few platforms creates new vulnerabilities. The future battle perhaps isn't for more tech, but perhaps for trust. And then environmental, the big one, beyond carbon towards survival. I guess climate shocks are rewriting the map for production. Regenerative, circular, and carbon negative models will define the winners, those producing food and drink that restores ecosystems as it feeds people. The real test here, I think, is speed. Adaptation will decide who feeds the future. So the next 30 years, disruption is now systemic, not episodic. The future of food and drink will be written, I think, by those who treat food not as a product, but a system of trust and health and almost planetary independence. The next 30 years, absolutely, everyone that's joining the summit today, it's going to test and define us all. But our task is not merely to react to this disruption, but to foresee it. And that's the reason for raising this today. To foresee it and to shape it, and with it to see the opportunity, because with disruption comes opportunity. Those are some of the headlines from our sort of longer term strategic review piece. What we'll do now is let's come a little closer to home and talk about 26, 27. And the core global driver that we're going to begin with is the backdrop, if you like. Day-to-day life feels perhaps a bit heavier for many people. Prices are up. Politics is very noisy at the moment. The big question marks over new technologies. And rather than waiting for the world to calm down, consumers are adapting, as they always do, in a pragmatic, very human way. And that adaptive mindset is what we're calling my new reality. This is a common thread, that deeper social and cultural driver that defines the mood of the moment and signals the shape of things to come. At its heart, my new reality is about accessible coping. Food and drink becomes everyday therapy, tiny rituals that soothe, focus, and energize, or simply make you smile. For some, that's joyful escapism, things like grown-up Happy Meals. We'll talk more about that later on. Dessert as breakfast, fries with martini. For others, it's back to basics value. Humble formats just done brilliantly. Zero fuss, maximum satisfaction. And then there's a third path, modern tools that make life easier and smarter. Think AI that edits the faff out of shopping, helps plan meals, reduce waste, and even improve eating experiences. Crucially, health sits at the centre stage. There's a fog of UFP debates, wellness chatter, people reaching for products that they can trust with fewer ingredients, clearer, cleaner labels, functional benefits to extend both physical and mental health spans. Longevity, but lived with pleasure at the same time. So what for food and drink? My new reality almost asks three things. Offer comfort and delight on a budget, so permissible treats and playful formats. Double down on good value but made well. Honest ingredients, everyday heroes, zero pretense. And also use smart tech with purpose. AI and innovation that remove friction, increase freshness, personalised choice. Accepting the new world order doesn't mean abandoning joy or individuality. It means designing food and drink for real lives, for right now. Practical, positive, personal. That characterizes my new reality. So let's introduce the 26-27 annual trends framework, the big reveal, our lens on the future of food and drink. At its heart, that one global driver, my new reality that I just talked a little bit about, sort of echoed across categories, cultures, and consumer mindsets. It's powered by 4 social and cultural forces. Those are very much the why behind the behaviour, and then 14 food and beverage trends that set the direction, and they're translated into 100 plus different manifestations. Those tangible signals to inspire innovation, strategy, and growth. For Trend Hub subscribers, pair this with our 25-26 framework to get that more rounded view of foresight. Treat 25-26 as the baseline map, the enduring shifts, the slower arcs, and 26-27, that new almost like delta layer that shows what's changing and accelerating fastest. Use them side by side in Trend Hub. It's very easy to be able to do that. Compare the mega trends, track carry through versus step change manifestations, and filter by your category to see where impact is biggest or perhaps more muted, because the pace and consequence of change differs for beverages compared to food, from QSR to fine dining, and of course beyond. This framework brings clarity to the future horizon and hopefully seeds that opportunity that lays in there as well. Use both of the frameworks together to decide what holds, what evolves, and what to build, so that you can confidently shape what comes next. So back to the top 10. We've distilled these from the master framework that you saw just a few moments ago, mapped against how each theme has evolved and stress tested through the wider social, cultural, political, and economic landscape to gauge their influence, their challenge, and their level of disruption over the next couple of years. What I'm going to do is myself and Shakuf are going to bring each one to life, flag the speakers that are diving into these in a little bit more detail, and then point you to the supporting content on the platform. But first, a rapid primer to set the scene. What we'll do is show you our top 10 for 26-27 in film. Here we go.
GLP-1 effect. The health landscape is being seismically shifted by GLP-1 drugs, which proponents hail as a breakthrough tool in weight management. And there are huge implications for how people eat and drink. Think mini meals, better for you snacks, protein and fibre boosting, and more. So opportunities to innovate for next-gen weight management abound. Food therapy. People are turning to food and drink for quick, easy respite. For some, that means looking to health-focused products that soothe and relax, or focus and energize. For others, it's simply about putting a smile on your face, whether that means a grown-up Happy Meal, dessert for breakfast, nostalgic nosh, or a dirty soda in lieu of the usual cuppa. Snack tales. The old 3-set meals a day formula is out. Snackification and eat what, how and when you like is in. From picky bits to topped and loaded toast, leveled up pastries to gourmet crisps and dip, there's something for everyone. And restaurants are getting in on the action too, with elevated snack menus and bar food. Butcher's Cut. With plant-based now part of mainstream parlance, many are turning their attention back to the butcher's counter. But this time around, no frills formats and value cuts get their time to shine. Neck, collar, belly, wings, and more are elevated to gastronomic heights using time and technique. Think char siu, pastrami, pibil or croquettes, and good old mincemeat is lauded at last, used to make anything from sausage to steak haché. All-day dessert. Pastries, puddings and desserts are fast becoming the go-to comfort food, bolstered by their cost credentials, since sweet snacks are more wallet-friendly than big blowout meals. So what's the next viral craze? Look out for retro faves like banana pudding, cinnamon rolls and pavlova, as well as boundary-bending swavery puds and boozy treats that take the edge off. Bread and batter. Carb lovers rejoice! Bread is back on the agenda. Cheap, cheerful and versatile, it's being elevated in both everyday eats and haute cuisine. Think French toast, sweet focaccia, or loaded crumpets, and signature bread courses with unexpected flavour twists and pairings. And it's not just bread on the menu, but also batter-based classics like crepe, pancakes and waffles. Convenience store. Time and energy are precious commodities, so convenience is king when it comes to shopping. Cue revamped models of local and convenience retail stores. next-gen vending, and AI being leveraged to streamline the consumer experience from browsing through to checkout. It's all about making the in-store experience as quick, easy, and enjoyable as possible. Keep it fresh. The fight against food waste continues, and the best way to reduce waste is to prevent it in the first place. Tech advancements are creating breakthroughs to prevent spoilage. Think antimicrobial packaging, smart sensors, and improved freshness indicators. And look out for edible films and coatings which can protect fruit and vegetables in transit, and even release antioxidants to inhibit spoilage. Edit and enhance. Gene editing is often misunderstood, but could be integral to long-term food security. As stigmas are lifted and regulatory hurdles jumped, gene editing is employed to do anything from improving the nutrient profile of grains, extending shelf life, like bananas that take longer to brown, to breeding animals which are resistant to common livestock illnesses. Cuisines rediscovered. When it comes to both midweek meal solutions and weekend date nights, many are leaning into forever favourite cuisines like Indian, Italian, American, Chinese, Japanese and Mexican. But as consumers grow ever more knowledgeable about cuisines, they look to restaurants and retailers to delve deeper into regional dishes, lesser known ingredients and flavour exploration.
I hope you enjoyed that. A whistle-stop tour of the top 10. What we're going to do is get into this in a little bit more detail with Shikufa. So we'll start with the big one, right? Let's start with the GLP-1 effect. Aligned to our megatrend weight matters and the cultural driver streamline and strengthen. What's happening with GLP-1 drugs isn't just appetite suppression. It's a fundamental rewiring of how people relate to food. One of our associates, Jules Green from Good Sense Research, put it in a conversation recently that I was having with her. She said, across the board, the findings are clear. GLP-1 isn't just suppressing appetite, it's rewiring food behaviours. These drugs have moved weight management from being niche to marginal, right into the mainstream. In practice, that means people are no longer eating in the same way. The constant hum of cravings, emotional eating and portion planning is quieter. Food becomes more functional and a bit more intentional. Instead of big plates, it's smaller, more frequent eating moments, snacks standing in for meals, and a sharp focus on foods that deliver satiety, but also protein and fibre, and foods that help you feel fuller for longer. For the food and drink industry, this shift opens up a once-in-a-generation opportunity for brands and food and drink businesses to reimagine not just what people eat, but how, when, and why they eat in this new reality that we're calling quiet hunger. As we get into a little bit more detail, and you'll see the same format for all of the top 10s, we just explore these in a little bit more detail. So when we look at how this is playing out, there are some really clear implications. Eating patterns are changing quickly. Many meals are going mainstream and portion-aligned formats will be in demand, whether that's frozen meals, ambient meals, or kits engineered to just be the right size for regulated appetite. Food becomes more deliberate. Many users describe a reduction in kind of food noise almost. Less thinking about food, less emotional eating, but more eating that really counts. On the nutrition side, protein and fibre are leading the charge. Protein to help preserve lean muscle mass, fibre and resistant starch to deliver that all-important fullness and energy balance. And it's not just about the meds, it's also about food first mimics that are on the rise too, things like oats and prebiotics, even pre-portioned snacks that echo the benefits in more of a natural way. Retailers and brands will need to rethink how we signpost this. Clear satiety cues, portion icons and smaller packs will help. In food service, expect smaller default mains with the option to perhaps add protein and fibre, more handheld and heat-to-eat solutions for people that want that kind of quick satisfaction. But there are some watch outs too. This is clearly a sensitive space, so language really matters here. We need to frame this around energy and focus and sort of fullness and not dieting. And of course, claims have to stay firmly within the nutrition territory, not veering too far into that sort of medicinal drug-like promise. The reason that this matters now is that GLP behaviours are already diffusing out beyond prescription unit users. Mini meals, satiety cues, portion formats, they're fast becoming the new normal, and that makes it not just a niche shift, but a broader cultural reset. And Rachel from Holland Barrett's going to be talking more to this later in the summit program. But Shakifa, I'm sure you've got some thoughts on this one.
I certainly do, as you can imagine. I mean, you can't really open a newspaper without seeing headers about GLP-1, semaglutide drugs, and so on. I mean, the impact is nothing sort of seismic, it feels like these days. I think some people listening to the news, reading the headlines about this stuff, would be forgiven for going, this isn't our first time at this rodeo. I might be showing my age here, but we had crazes around weight loss drugs, things like fen-phen in the 90s, and they kind of came and went. So I guess my question is, and it's a question a lot of people would ask, is, does the F word apply here? Is this a fad potentially? Will we still be talking about this in a couple of years' time, or will it go the way of those kind of 90s weight loss drugs? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm certain you're right. I think there'll be a lot of people in the summit audience today asking that same question. I think our view is that it's not just a fad; it's very much a structural shift. I think, particularly as usage broadens with oral formats coming, it's rewiring how and when people eat towards sort of those mini meals, protein and fiber forward snacks, satiety-led choices, creating that sort of durable, multi-year sort of innovation platform almost from an industry point of view. We also see a parallel with natural GLP-1 foods as well, those sort of GLP-1 halos, oats, fiber, berberine, pushing sort of next generation weight management tools very much into the mainstream, and something that more people are prepared to have a conversation. I think the play now is sort of portionable formats, protein and fiber upgrades, and sort of blood sugar, sort of smart carbs that deliver that satisfaction but without excess. And I think if we just step back into the broader social and cultural context, and this goes back to a conversation you and I were having a couple of weeks ago, when you've got global sports stars and icons and role models and influencers like Serena Williams talking about her journey with weight loss and management, her use of GLP-1, I think that means it's very much in the mainstream. And I was at a conference just in the last week or so, when anecdotally somebody was talking about their father who phoned the doctors, and the pre-recorded message starts with, "If you're calling about GLP-1 medication, press 1." You know that all of these indicators are that it's going well beyond a fad, and it's actually already becoming baked into our broader food and social culture.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say I couldn't agree more. Just the simple fact that people know what a GLP-1 is, the average consumer isn't sort of surprised when they see it in the headlines, is indicative of that cultural shift that you're describing. I mean, I can't wait to hear what Rachel has to say about it as well, because I'm sure she's got loads of insights on this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, with that in mind, we'll move on to two to talk about food as therapy. And I think food has always had clearly that emotional dimension, but right now it's being elevated to that role of therapy. Rising stress and anxiety are pushing people to seek out food and drink as a way to cope, to soothe, or simply, as I talked about in the introduction, to just put a smile on their face. And for some, this is about health-led choices, products with calming botanicals, mood balancing adaptogens and functional blends that restore sort of focus and energy. But for others, it's more about the joy and the release, the sort of playful indulgence is a grown-up version. I mentioned it in the intro, grown-up version of a Happy Meal. We'll talk more about that later. Dessert for breakfast, or even that sort of dirty soda instead of tea or coffee. So we're seeing food and drink straddle these two roles, food and medicine. And this creates a space for brands to innovate across the full spectrum, from calming and restorative through playful, nostalgic, and smile-inducing. Again, like the others get into the detail, there are a number of different faces to this number two trend, food therapy. First, the functional relief space is growing fast. Drinks, snacks, supplements that promise calm. Sleep support, sharper focus through adaptogens and nootropics. This is food that works harder than simple nutrition. Second is mood food, those familiar feel-good picks, chocolate, ice cream, that are being reframed as a valid part of self-care. These are no longer guilty pleasures, but part of everyday therapy. And then there's the playful indulgence side, products designed to make you smile. We're talking here about those desserts in unconventional formats and places, soda mashups, those comforting meals, a trend that's about joy and not about health. Nostalgia absolutely has a key role to play here. Retro flavors, throwback brands, childhood comfort, offering reassurance in what continue to be quite uncertain times. On the industry side, food service is responding with mood-led menus, calm, focused, or smile moments. And in retail, they build cross-category bundles that position food and drink as that sort of instant escape. Like everything we're going to talk about today, there are some watch outs. Um, it is a sensitive space. We must avoid trivializing topics like mental well-being, and be careful not to over medicinalize claims. Position as supportive and uplifting rather than prescriptive. In terms of why now, we talked about stress, anxiety peaking globally, and consumers are looking for immediate, everyday ways to cope. And food is brilliantly universal. It's accessible and has the power to bring kind of comfort and joy, which is the idea behind food therapy. So it's very, very resonant today. So what do you think about this one? I know this will be a personal favourite.
It certainly is. You know that I've long championed pairing chicken tenders with a glass of champagne.
Absolutely.
I just love that now I can legitimately call it self-care. Um, I do. Talking of chicken tenders and champagne, looking at the examples on this page, which all look totally Moorish, but I'm looking at chicken tenders. I'm looking at a Snickers pot for breakfast, essentially. The sandwich on the bottom. I mean, that's basically a ham sandwich with a sort of grown-up version of chips stuffed inside or
Yeah.
crisps.
Yeah.
Um, Looking at all of those, it does feel like a lot of these manifestations are quite bedded in nostalgia. Now,
Mm.
I guess my question is, do you think that nostalgia is a sort of the now trend? And does that mean that it has staying power? Will these stick around? Will these stand the test of time? Or do these feel like they're sort of reflective of the times we're living through?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for the 30 odd years I've been in the food industry, nostalgia has always played a role. I think it's one of those things that's brilliantly universal and can work in, when times are good and when times are perhaps not so good. In summary, I'd say nostalgia doesn't expire, it perhaps renews. In uncertain times, I think people reach for foods that they remember for them. That could be flavors and formats and kind of food rituals that signal sort of safety and self-soothing, I guess. It only goes old when you kind of copy and paste it. I think it stays powerful when you refresh the memory, perhaps in a lighter, cleaner, portion smart way with premium ingredients and the global mashups or digital age cues, I think. So it's about keeping the nostalgia relevant and perhaps thinking more about nostalgia with purpose. The taste they know, but rebuilt for the way that consumers live now, I think would be my view.
Totally agree. And love the phrase nostalgia.
Yeah.
Thinking about looking at nostalgia
Yeah.
through a fresh lens
Yeah.
constantly.
Yeah, exactly. Great. Well, we should move on to number three. We're calling this one Snack Tales, links to our megatrend dining out and the cultural driver, Snack Tales. The three set meals formula is broken down. Instead, we're seeing snackification become the new normal. People are grazing, they're dipping in and out of eating occasions, making snacks do the job of meals themselves. And snacks today aren't just fillers, they are elevated, indulgent, and versatile. Snacking is no longer just a bridge between meals, it's the meal for many consumers. We're talking topped and loaded toast and gourmet crisps with dips, pastries that feel like an occasion in themselves. Even restaurants and bars are kind of stepping in with snack menus and small plates that can rival a main event. So this is a democratized food moment. The snack has stepped up, it's premiumized, it's playful, and it's completely rewriting how and when people eat. So again, let's take a little bit of a closer look. First, the lifestyle change. Meal times are softening. They're becoming more flexible. Grazing style eating is what fits modern routines best now. People want the freedom to eat what and when they want it. That sort of evolution of the fourth meal from last year into the fifth and the sixth meal, more bold, more whimsical. Second, the formats themselves are very much leveling up. Gourmet crisps with inventive dips, loaded toast with layers of flavour, hybrid pastries that feel indulgent and playful. And snacks are becoming the main event in their own right. Food service is leaning into this hard. Elevated snack menus, bar bites, small plates are all taking centre stage, particularly for social occasions where sharing food is part of the experience. Retail is also following suit, developing new snack solutions that hit that fourth mealtime sweet spot. I mean, it's fast and flavourful and flexible with a mix of things like mix and match picky bits, tapas style boxes, dip kits, curated snack boards that allow people to create that same experience but in their own home. And I think snacks are also becoming a form of social currency designed for sharing, for those Instagram moments, for casual entertaining. And we're starting to see crossover moments. The drinks and the snacks paired together or even merged into what we're calling snack tail, so hence the name. Of course, they are kind of watch outs. Indulgent has to be balanced, portion cues, mindful positioning to keep it fun without tipping into excess. In terms of why now, because snackification fits the way we live modern lives, time pressed, choice driven, and looking for food that can be flexible, playful, and endlessly adaptable. It works across every demographic, making snacks that are one of the most inclusive and scalable trends in the market. The value is in simplicity, adapting existing lines into new formats. I think the pizza on the top right hand side is a brilliant example of this from Domino's in Japan. But playing with formats and portion size, elevating flavor profiles. But the key to success here is in execution, keeping the preparation time clear, the packaging minimal, and the sensory payoff a big one.
Just listening to what you've described around format play and mashups,
Yeah,
and also just looking at the manifestations on this slide,
yeah.
and the words on the page, things like crisps and dip, walking pizza, corn dogs, all that kind of stuff. It all sounds really playful and almost downright irreverent sometimes. And even the names, snacktail, snackification, all of that is almost like tongue in cheek. It's quite young, it's quite youthful. I guess that's my question. Is this a trend that's really there for young people, for Gen Z Alpha, or is this something that can apply across demographics? What do you think?
I think that's a great question, and for me, it's quite a simple response really to that. I don't think it's just for the young people. I think it's for everyone. We're all busy, benefit-seeking eaters across all ages. I think Snacktails delivers portion control and things like um, mood-led flavors, mood enhancers, but also the protein and fiber piece as well. They flex from kind of teen gaming on one hand, which is very big in kind of my home life, to midlife desk lunches, school run bites, and sort of alcohol-free evening treats. I think the hook isn't youth; it's very much about format, function, and fun. So I think there's broad appeal with Snacktail across the demographic spectrum.
Glad to hear it because I do love this one.
Exactly. Uh, right, let's lean into four, and one that we've called Butcher's Cut. After years of the spotlight being very much on plant-based, we're now seeing a swing back to the butcher's counter. But this isn't all about prime fillets and luxury steaks. I know this is about the cuts that are considered perhaps a little bit more secondary or even overlooked, particularly in the wake of prices rising in red meat protein. Neck, collar, belly, wings, and of course mince are being treated with care, creativity, and global inspiration. Techniques like char siu, pastrami, pibble, croquettes are all elevating those humble cuts to real kind of gastronomic heights. It is in part due to thrift, but also part creativity. It's giving way to a brand new story to tell in this space. Value cuts are not a compromise. They're becoming very much the stars of the show. This sits within our mega trend meat and poultry and our cultural driver back to basics. When we dig a little bit deeper, butcher's cut plays out in a few key ways. First, it's about bringing those sort of overlooked cuts into the spotlight, cuts like neck and collar, wings, belly, which were once those kind of margin fillers, are now being celebrated as the kind of main events. There's a real global inspiration here as well. These cuts have been transformed through technique and heritage. I mentioned things like char siu pork, Mexican pibble, croquetas, pastrami. These dishes show that with time and craft, value cuts can deliver incredible flavors and experiences. We're also seeing mince get its moment. Once dismissed as that basket filler, it's now central to everything, from steak haché to lard, sausages, meatballs, of course, burgers. It's versatile, it's accessible, and increasingly treated with the same respect as premium cuts. For food service, this means that menus are proudly highlighting slow cooked or crafted value cuts as signature dishes. And for retail, there's an opportunity to build package, butcher's choice ranges, recipe-led mince line, and kits that bring all of the craft of slow cooked to home cooks. Again, like all of them, there are watch outs. We have to be conscious of health and sustainability debates around meat and avoid tipping into overconsumption. But provenance, transparency, and respect for the whole animal are important to keep this story really, really positive. In terms of why now, cost pressures mean that people are looking for value, while at the same time, nose to tail eating, minimizing waste are also cultural priorities as well. Butcher's Cut combines both. It's affordable, it's ethical, and when elevated with the right technique, it's also absolutely delicious as well.
Yeah, speaking of delicious, I love this trend just for
Yeah,
bringing that meatloaf sandwich into my
yeah,
life. Look at that.
absolutely.
Breaded meatloaf, Westcombe cheddar, Dijon mayo, and bone marrow butter.
Doesn't
I
it look
mean,
amazing?
tell me you don't want to dive into that. I guess I guess my question on this one, deliciousness aside and how appealing these examples look, is uh, going to the sort of conversation around meat consumption generally, as you and I well know,
Yeah.
it's quite hard to find stats that you can throw completely behind because obviously quite hard to pin consumers down on how they're really eating, so to speak. But anecdotally and through a lot of surveys we do follow, we can see that there is a story around meat consumption in general being on the decline. So I guess my question is, how does this trend, the butcher's cut trend, tally with those stories that we do read about meat consumption generally being down?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think because shoppers are in that sort of fewer better space now, even with meat volume under pressure, I think people still want standout protein moments.
Mm.
Might want them a bit less often, and they might want them to be more considered. And I think that's where Butcher's Cut really wins that sort of trade up by delivering a number of different things for me. Firstly, the sort of the flavor value sweet spot, those sort of secondary chef cuts. I mean, things that I know you and I both love, like hanger steaks, pavettes, neck fillet. They give big taste, but also tenderness and provenance without the prices of some of the more premium cuts. There's a craft and trust piece as well, that sort of butcher's hand advice, sort of exact trim thickness. There's a bit of that as well. Whole animal logic that chimes more broadly with what's happening in food and drink. Nose to tail, it feels a little bit more ethically aligned. It's clearly waste savvy and aligned from an affordability point of view as well. And then I think you can have um, occasion-led sort of home consumption steak nights. I mean, just anecdotally on social, we see a lot of that. Grill rituals, small plate sharing, sort of pre-moments that justify a better cut. So consumers, if they're trading down on frequency, but perhaps up on quality, Butcher's Choice is that sort of quiet luxury of meat, that sort of attainable, story-rich, and but sort of resilient food stuff, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I guess sort of essentially less frequent but more thoughtful
Yeah,
engagement with meat consumption. Yeah.
exactly that. Exactly that. Right, let's move on to number five, aligned with our megatrend sweet tooth and our cultural driver having fun. Um, we're calling this all day dessert. Desserts are breaking out of their traditional role as the final course and becoming, frankly, an anytime indulgence. What's fueling this shift is a combination of comfort and cost. In a time when blowout meals, some are a little bit less affordable, pastries, puddings, and desserts offer indulgent that's wallet friendly and accessible at the same time. We're seeing a return to retro favourites, things like banana pudding and cinnamon rolls and good old pavlova. Classics that carry nostalgia and comfort, but at the same time, desserts that can be also reinterpreted to be more playful and adventurous boundary blurring recreations, and also that sort of sweet, savoury, swavery puds, boozy takes on these favourites as well, to just take them and elevate them, make them a little bit more grown up. All of this is making desserts not just the end of the meal, but a highlight of the day, breakfast, afternoon, late night. Dessert really is everywhere. Once again, just to get into, give you a little bit more of that kind of detailed narrative. Firstly, there's a daytime blur piece. Desserts are showing up at breakfast, at mid-morning pastry, afternoon pick-me-ups, or even as late-night comfort as well. They're not confined to the end of the meal anymore. There's a real retro revival piece here. I mentioned pavlova already, banana pudding, cinnamon rolls, partly because they carry nostalgia, but also because they're simple, they're familiar and pretty affordable as well. We're also seeing a new wave of format innovation. Desserts are remixed and mashed up into sort of viral sensation, cube croissant, hybrid cakes, social first bakes, all of that is part of it as well. They're designed to spark curiosity, capture attention, and they travel really, really well online. At the more sort of experimental end, there's that savory crossover that we love, desserts that borrow from the savory kitchen ingredients like miso or soy or chili, adding that little bit of intrigue. And the sort of boozy puddings as well that can give desserts that sort of slightly more sort of adult twist, turning them into not only comfort but also a bit of entertainment there as well. Food service really leaning in with dedicated dessert menus, playful afternoon offers, while retail innovating with frozen mashups, mini packs, and patisserie kits that let people sort of have that indulgent moment in their own home. Like all of them, the watch out, it's about balance. Desserts should bring joy, but there's also a space for portion cues as well. Lighter spins, transparency on ingredients so that it doesn't tip into overindulgence. In terms of why now, I think we've kind of touched on that really, because sweet treats are one of the most affordable ways to bring joy and comfort. And I know no, we don't want to talk about cost of living, but that is still an important context. A small dessert delivers big emotional value, and that's why desserts are having their moment across all day parts. Adam Handling is going to be speaking a bit about this later on. He do the most incredible, very theatrical nitro tiramisu at his Ugly Butterfly restaurant, which is incredible. So light, so delicious, but so much theatre as well. Anyway, Shakufa, what do you think about this one?
I mean, nitro tiramisu sounds amazing.
All right.
I did want on this one though to just hone in on the point you make around swavery
Yeah,
crossover, if I might.
yeah,
You in the text we talk about things like miso cheesecake,
yeah,
soy tiramisu, puddings that kind of get amped up with salts and spices. In the pictures, we can see a koji caramel, ice
yeah,
cream with Thai basil and long pepper. I mean, it all sounds delicious, but actually it doesn't have the shock value that it used to because savory ingredients and sweet applications has almost moved into ubiquitous territory now.
yeah.
So I guess my question is, do you think that we're at peak
Oh,
swavery when it comes to dessert space, or do you think there's still room to grow here?
I think that's a great question. Is there such a thing as peak wavery? I don't think it's a spike. I think it's a new baseline. If I'm honest, I think we've moved. You're right. We've moved from novelty or shock to something that
Mm,
is just it's there. It may not. We may not always call it out. In fact, salt, as you say, some of the ingredients: smoke, cheese, olive oil, tahini, like black sesame. It feels like they're standard tools now to dial sweetness in and sort of add depth. And in an all-day dessert, sort of from bakery counters through to late night, as I was talking about, I think that balance travels better. It feels a little bit more when applied, it makes desserts a little bit more adult, and it
mm,
aligns with some of those kind of sugar smart choices. I guess like other trends that exist within food and drink. You get sort of cycles of intensity, but I think, say, swavery is very much part of the dessert lexicon now. We might not always call it out. I think it's just one of the ways that we build pleasure into modern desserts and sweet offerings, I think.
Yeah. And actually in the book we do talk about breaking it down even further within the savory profiles, don't we?
Yeah,
Talking about spicy and
yeah,
spicy and sour even.
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So for a trended subscriber, you can get into much more detail in our 26-27 book. We're going to move on. We're at the halfway point. We'll move on to six, bread and batter. So carb lovers can absolutely rejoice here. Bread is firmly, and batter, very much firmly back on the agenda. I think it was once, not too long ago, maligned by diet culture. Bread and batter are now being reappraised as affordable, versatile, and of course, deeply comforting foods. We're seeing things like French toast and loaded crumpets and things like sweet focaccia become everyday indulgences, while at the other end of the spectrum, restaurants are putting real craft into signature bread courses with unexpected pairings and flavour twists as well. It's not all about bread, but also batter-based favourites like crepes and pancakes and waffles also being reimagined as just canvases, almost platforms for indulgence, nostalgia, and innovation. From the home kitchen through to haute cuisine, humble carbs are rightfully being celebrated once again. So again, breaking this one down, a few bits to call out here. First is the everyday uplift, simple formats like crumpets and French toast or focaccia being leveled up with toppings, with sweet twists, with unexpected pairings. These are humble foods given that sort of special touch. We're seeing signature breads in restaurants. You can see the example on the top right hand side from the ugly butterfly on the top right hand side there, where the bread course is no longer just a filler, but a stage for creativity, for expression, but also making the sort of local agri connections as well. Things like custom butters and flavored oils to produce breads baked with unusual ingredients, about giving bread the same attention perhaps as you would a main dish. So real global influence here as well. Things like Japanese souffle pancakes, Mexican hotcakes, and other batter classics that are breaking into the mainstream, showing how universal and adaptable these formats are. There's a real hybrid creative piece here as well. Croissant loaves, laminated brioche, uh, pastry bread crossovers that blurred those categories and keep, I think, consumers being curious. Retail and food service both have opportunities to play here. Ready to eat sweet loaves, frozen batter kits, gourmet crumpet packs, and elevated bread served as a centerpiece with oils and dips and butters. The watch out is that carbs do carry still a little bit of historical baggage, so positioning matters. Portion cues, craft, quality, and experience are key to making this feel like an indulgence, but an indulgence with permission. In terms of why now, because we talked about it and we say it quietly, cost of living, that really important context for bread and batter, they offer unbeatable value. They're relatively cheap, but very cheerful at the base. But with the right creativity, they deliver comfort and indulgence and that sense of occasion, but all without breaking the bank at the same time. I can see your mouth watering, Shakif, on this one.
Always. I guess my question on this one is it leading on from the one we've just looked at as well. You know, we've looked at things like sticky toffee, we've talked about tiramisu, we're talking about pastry crossovers, bread and butter being a main event, waffle pops on this page, caramelized crumpets. I mean, I want all of them, obviously. But just kind of circling back to the start almost of the session, or the start of the top 10 as we've gone through it. What I'm wondering is how does this tally up with the other side of the coin that we're talking about, which is the GLP-1s and the weight management? How can both things be trending essentially?
Yeah, it's a great question. I wondered how long it was going to be before you called me out on that one. I think it's a great question, and I think more broadly, as we know, to all trends, there's always some kind of counter movement. But to answer it very specifically on this, I think bread and batter don't vanish into the background in a weight managed world. If anything, perhaps they need to be smarter. Um, Again, we've talked about this in the world of meat. Perhaps it's less but better, smaller portions, slower carbs. Um, Really sort of amping up the sourdough, whole grain, seeds, that sort of fiber protein enriched flours, perhaps, and perhaps lighter textures, particularly on the batter side. So tempura thin, crunchy, airy that satisfies without the heaviness, but also quality fats, cleaner labels, and craft. Those kind of longer ferments, heritage grains turn something that is quite everyday into a worth it occasion rather than just an everyday filler. My view is that we don't demonize the category, we redesign it for satiety and control and pleasure at the same time, would be my view.
Totally agree, especially not around demonizing any category, really.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
So let's move on to number seven. And we're going to talk here about convenience store. Time and energy have become two of the most valuable commodities, not only for us as industry, but really importantly for consumers. And that means convenience is continues to be king. We're seeing retailers rethink the role of the local store. It was interesting. I spent some time up in Skye and in the Highlands. It's very evident they're moving beyond the basic corner shop to places that are streamlined, that are tech-enabled hubs that are fast and clear and that are easier to navigate. And at the same time, technology is really being layered in here as well. Sort of AI guiding customers straight to the product that they want. Checkout free experiences, next gen vending that goes far beyond snack foods to offer hot food and fresh produce and premium drinks on the go. It's all about giving people back those precious minutes in the day whilst making shopping not just faster, but also actually more enjoyable. Again, lots of takeaways here, starting with revamped store formats, convenience of local shops being redesigned to make browsing and buying quicker, but also more intuitive. Technology is really important here. Smart tech, so AI being used to improve the in-store journey, apps that guide customers to products in real time, checkout free or self-scan systems becoming more ubiquitous, taking the pain out of paying. Third, the rise of next generation vending. So automated kiosks are moving into new categories now, into fresh meals, into hot food, even premium coffees and cocktails. So convenience can literally be anywhere. There's also a growing expectation of sort of frictionless journeys where browsing, payment, and even home delivery are seamlessly connected through apps and loyalty schemes. But this is not just about speed, it's also about creating a store experience that feels easier, enjoyable, and really importantly, stress-free. That's an important distinction because the watch out is making sure convenience doesn't come at the cost of human connection. Consumers still want service and that sense of care. In terms of why now, because as we've alluded to, time-pressed lifestyles mean consumers they're no longer willing to waste minutes in clunky shopping experiences. Investment in tech is meeting that demand, and convenience itself is fast becoming that marker of loyalty.
I have a lot of thoughts on this one, as you can imagine. I do have a question. It's not an easy one, but I'm not going to take it easy on you, Charles. I guess my question centers around, I mean, if you take a step back and think about it, we use phrases like AI and robotics so casually now. It's so firmly part of our lexicon. It feels like they've been around forever in some ways. But actually, as we know, we really are only at the advent of these technologies. So I guess, and this is why it's not an easy question, is how far do you think this can go? I mean, if you look at the examples on this side, if we've already got vending and dark trading
Yeah.
overnight and, robotic stock replenishing, like where can we go from here? What does
That's
it look like in 10 years' time, even?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a great question. I'll buy myself a few seconds by just saying to start with, probably further than we think. I think AI really will push convenience into ultra specific formats. So if we think of different settings, is it a university campus? Is it roadside? Is it transport hubs? Is it more kind of neighborhood? Each one of those settings, I think, if we think about it in detail, um, has its own needs. So I'm imagining dynamic ranging, dynamic planograms and pricing refreshed in real time, but with that sort of local lens, that local demand very much kind of front of mind. I think expect more back of house robotics, um, shelf scanning bots to auto replenish, drones and micro fulfillment to cover the last sort of 1 to 3 miles. At the front of the store, vision checkout, smart POS, experiential loyalty apps to really sort of personalize bundles and experiences, upselling perhaps by day part. Um, and even maybe even nudge or coach from a kind of a choices perspective as well. I think convenience evolves from something that's perhaps a bit more generalist, more kiosk-like to autonomous, data-led, sort of pit stop, hot food, fresh, pharmacy, um, services, but all very much tuned in to the kind of micro environment, the street or the setting that the convenience environment is in would be.
I mean, it is Brave New World stuff, isn't it? But there's so
It
much opportunity for retailers to explore here.
Definitely, and you're so right. In the framing of your question, we are only at the beginning. Moving on to number eight, we're calling it Keep It Fresh. It's not new, this, but it is. There are some really interesting developments in this space. I think the fight against food waste is shifting from fixing the problem at the end to preventing it at the source. That's a fundamental shift. I think we're seeing what we're seeing is a wave of tech innovation designed to extend shelf life and keep food fresher for longer, and that means things like antimicrobial packaging and smart freshness sensors, real-time freshness indicators, even edible films and coatings that protect fruit and vegetables in transit. Some of these coatings can actually release antioxidants, actively slowing down the spoilage process as well. The impact obviously is twofold: less food waste for the planet, better value for the consumer who gets more life out of their everyday shop. When we look at how this plays out, there are again a few key things to identify. First is smart packaging. So things like antimicrobial wraps and materials that don't just protect the food, but actively slow down the spoilage of the food stuff. Things like freshness sensors, the real-time indicators that show when food is nearing the end of life, sometimes linked to an AI system that can track and predict spoilage across the entire supply chain. Edible coatings, those sort of natural invisible films applied to fruits and vegetables that can protect them during transit and sometimes release antioxidants, keep them fresher for days longer. Clearly a big retail benefit here too. Longer shelf life reduces shrink and waste. And there's also that sort of reassurance to consumers that the food they buy is genuinely fresh. And for consumers, it's about fewer trips, I guess, to the store, better value from each purchase and less waste at home. Like everything that we've talked about, there are watch outs, and the big one here is around trust. Tech-led freshness needs really clear communication so that consumers understand what these materials and coatings and sensors are, the fact that they're safe and natural and working particularly in their best interests. In terms of why now, because food waste is still at record highs, and that the quiet cost of living that I've talked about, pressures mean that people really want every pound to stretch as far as it possibly can. Preventing waste at source delivers a sustainability win and a consumer win at the same time. So keep it fresh, Scooper.
Lot to unpack on this one,
Yes.
obviously. I guess one thing that definitely jumps off the page for me is edible coatings, probably because I do see a lot of headlines around it. There's lots of buzz online, lots of people very excited about it. Some people not so excited, and they say things like it's a fad, you still need to take them home and wash the coating off, etc., etc. Without getting too techy and into the science of it all, what do you think about them? Do you think they're a fad? Do you think there's potential there? Do you think customers will buy into these sort of sustainable alts when it comes to packaging if they cost more as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I think it takes generations, I think, sometimes to move these
Mm,
things. I don't think it's a fad. I think edible coatings are becoming part of a future fresh chain infrastructure.
mm,
Um, we talked about AI and it just, and on the convenience one a couple of moments ago, and how the technology is in its infancy. And I think this is the same here. I think as the technology improves, as it becomes cleaner, plant-based films, perhaps better sensory neutrality, and retailers perhaps chase waste reduction coatings that can add real days of quality, especially for things like cut fruit and veg and berries and herbs and those types of things. I think it will scale. I think the trade-off here is trust, as I mentioned. I think really keeping it transparent, plain English ingredients, be really clear about why it's being used, make it optional as well, so it's not something that's imposed, but there's a choice there, and really prove you do the life cycle analysis work, basically prove that this tangibly makes a difference. I think like some of the other technologies that we've talked about in the past, like things like cellular meat, if it saves waste, it maintains texture and taste and shortens those sort of losses. I think those are the things that over time will mean that it will gain traction and ultimately stick. But these things do take time, and they can take generations in some cases.
mm. And as you say, trust is king in the
Trust
process. So
me.
much of it is down to just clear communication, isn't it?
It serves. Yeah, absolutely. And that segues us really nicely into the penultimate one, that we're calling edit and enhance. So gene editing is one of those subjects that's often misunderstood. And for many years, it carried a real stigma linked with the historical GM debates, and that's naturally bred a consumer wariness. But what we're seeing now is a real shift in the conversation. Rather than it being feared, gene editing is increasingly viewed as a tool for food security. It's about function and resilience, helping us improve nutrient density in grains, extended shelf life in fresh produce, and even breed animals that are more resistant to common diseases. In short, this story is moving away from fear and towards solution, positioning gene editing as part of a much broader toolkit for building a more secure and resilient food system. And again, lots of things to unpack here. A couple of things to call out. First is around nutrient boosting. So using gene editing to increase perhaps protein. We've talked about how that's relevant earlier in the session. Increase vitamins, minerals in grains and produce, making staple foods more nourishing. Then we've got shelf life extension, bananas that don't go brown, vegetables that last longer in transit or on the shelf. This is a powerful tool in the fight against food waste from the previous one that we talked through. Then there's an animal resilience piece, breeding livestock that are resistant to common diseases, not only improves obviously the welfare, but also reduces resilience on things like antibiotics. Gene editing is also there's a sustainability lever here too. By cutting losses, reducing waste, improving yields, can also help lower be one of the tools to reduce the environmental footprint on the food system as well. Of course, the big watch out here is around consumer perception. The stigma hasn't gone entirely, but communication and transparency are absolutely crucial. And the focus has got to be on the tangible benefits like better nutrition, less waste, healthier animals, not just the technology itself, but the benefit here. Regulatory changes are helping drive momentum too, with the US leading the way, and in Europe, including the UK, beginning to loosen restrictions. In terms of why now, I think it's because food security pressures really are intensifying. Talked about that right in the sort of long-term disruptive forces piece. Climate change, population growth, and waste all demand new solutions. Gene editing is increasingly being seen as one of the more pragmatic and powerful tools to help them. This is clearly a controversial one, Shakufa. What do you think?
Controversial, but also nothing short of amazing if you
Yeah,
really think about it. I
for
mean,
sure.
the food science geek
Yeah,
in me is just
Yeah,
like amazed by the idea of bananas that don't brown
yeah,
or avocados that don't go straight from firm to overripe
yeah,
and the things that science is able to achieve now really.
yeah,
I guess sort of the science geek inside me aside, that's very excited about all of this. If we could take a step back and think
yeah,
about how the average consumer engages with this type of topic, as we know, and you alluded to it at the start there, terms like GM have been
yeah,
historically maligned. People have a bit of what you sometimes call ick factor about
yeah.
food that they see as sort of scientifically created or however you want to describe it. Why do you think that's changing now? Like, do you think that people can get over that? And why do you think now is the time for that to happen?
Yeah, I think it's a great question and brilliantly framed. I think for me, it's yes, if the benefits are real and visible. I think those are, and it goes back to some of the things we've talked about in the previous trend deep dives in terms of trust and transparency. And I think if the benefits are real and those things kind of come with it, consumers over time will back sort of edit and enhance. As an industry, what we need to do is sort of prove a step change. What does it actually do? Is it better nutrition? Is it allergen free or lower impact or less sugar or whatever it is. Um, Keep the communication plain. Obviously, it has to be priced within reach. And we have to remember that this is food and drink. It has to be enjoyable. It has to be delicious. I'd probably start in sort of more pragmatic spaces, perhaps performance snacks and dairy alts, and then perhaps normalize perhaps chef-led launches and the third-party validation that goes with it as well. I think the framing is really important. So rather than synthetic, it's kind of nature plus. Um, um, and over time, I'd see these types of things as becoming the new common sense, not compromise. But back to the previous one I talked about, it can take generations for these things to happen. And I think this edit enhance is definitely part of our future food and drink landscape, particularly when you think about food security as and a sort of future proof food and drink system. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And as you say, communication, education, messaging, so
Always.
important. But also, as you mentioned, don't forget about deliciousness.
Yeah, food.
Food has to be
Yeah,
delicious. And if
exactly.
you can champion that, that's a win as well.
And that, Shifa, is the most amazing segue, thank you, into number 10, cuisines rediscovered. And I think when it comes to everyday meals and weekend occasions, people are continuing to lean in to their forever favorites, partly because some of all the broader stuff that we talked about at the beginning of this session, Indian and American and Chinese and Mediterranean and Japanese and Mexican, these are all cuisines that feel like a guarantee, comforting, reliable, always delicious. Talking about deliciousness. But something really interesting is happening alongside that comfort as consumers naturally become more knowledgeable, more traveled, more confident in the kitchen. They're no longer just satisfied with sort of generic versions of those cuisines. Instead, they're looking for more depth. They're looking for regional dishes, lesser known ingredients and flavor expressions and experiences that make those familiar things feel fresh again. So what we're seeing is a shift, not away from these favourites, but into a place of rediscovery. And it's about comfort and curiosity and indulgence and exploration. I know we're going to have a great conversation in the next session all about this, but just to get into a couple of those dimensions. Um, the forever favourites they remain super robust, super strong. The ones I've mentioned, American, Mexican, Japanese, Italian, Indian, Chinese, they still dominate those midweek dinners and takeaways and date nights. They're that kind of comforting anchor. But there's a growing appetite for a regional lens. People are no longer just asking for Italian; they want Sicilian. They don't just want Chinese, they want Sichuan, not just Mexican, but Oaxacan. And regionality adds that richness, that specificity, and the excitement that goes with that as well. There's also a real ingredient discovery piece that's going along with this as well. The sauces, the paste, the noodles, the herbs and spices that once felt niche are now popping up more in a mainstream retail space. They're ready to experiment, and retailers and restaurants are responding with products and menus that kind of educate whilst inspiring at the same time. There's also a super interesting cross cuisine creativity happening that we've seen evolve from sort of previous years. Consumers happy to kind of mix and match, blending familiar favorites with unexpected influence, moving towards what we might call cuisine agnostic cooking, ensuring that the expression and the credit for the inspiration is communicated in those dishes as well. Clearly, there's a watch out, as there always is, and that's about balance. Exploration should be inviting, but also not intimidating. Go too far into the obscure and you risk alienating consumers who still want a level of familiarity. Why now? Because consumers are more globally connected and culturally curious than perhaps ever in human history. They don't want to abandon the cuisines they love. They want to rediscover them in a new, deeper, and more flavorful ways. I'm sorry, Shakifa, we're going to talk about this in the next session, so we're not going to have questions on this one.
We'll let you turn the tables on
I'm going
this
to
one in
turn
the
the
next
table
session. Yeah.
on the next session, and we'll be talking about cuisines in a lot more detail, but just a little taste for it. So now, if we move beyond the top 10, there's a fascinating set of rising trends sitting just outside the spotlight that we've talked about today, but absolutely shaping the way people eat and drink. So we start with humble veg, the broccoli, the cabbage, the chickpeas, the potatoes, vegetables once considered basic and now being treated with Michelin level respect, elevating them into star dishes like tomato flights or mushroom shawarma. Then it's all about speed with quick cook. Consumers are chasing faster than ever solutions. 1 minute, 2 minute meals, thanks to microwaves and air fryers and other technological advancements. Thaw and eat formats, even instant noodles 2.0. Convenience is being completely redefined. On the tech side, AI and robotics, talked a little bit on that. Really breaking new ground here, from traceable packaging and supply chain transparency to robotics mixing salads, drones delivering, and AI vehicles making everything more efficient. Hybrid products also on the rise, things like dairy oat milk blends. They're not fully plant-based, but they carry health, ethical, and sustainability benefits while delivering on the taste and texture, but without compromise as well. Good fats reframe the fat story. Consumers leading into things like beef tallow and schmaltz and marrow. Artisan butters for flavour and indulgence. Americana continues its global nostalgia wave. Here, think cherry cola and Shirley Temples, and we talked about banana puddings with buffalo wings and pastrami for all sorts of broader social and cultural reasons. And American food is being adopted and celebrated around the world, and we'll talk more about that later on. Health also has its place in with Eat for Longevity. Here the focus is on foods that help people live longer and better. We'll be talking about that later in today's session. So minimally processed, safe, nutritious with less sugar, fats and salt, and greater attention to cleaner labels and reduced toxins. Have It Your Way captures that joy of customization. DIY tacos and jacket potatoes, build your own topics, self-serve dessert bars. All about elevating simple formats through personalization. And finally, handheld supper. When dinner has to be on the go, handheld formats really are leveling up. Links really nicely with the Snacktail ones. Snack formats and handheld formats really leveling up, from sort of walking tacos and personal pizzas to ploughman skewers and Spanish gilders. Really anything on a stick, in a bun, or wrapped up really is sort of ready, fair game in this space. So these together, the 11 to 20, sit alongside the top 10, really to highlight the diversity of what's next, from humble vegetables through robotics and customization and the global love affair with Americana. They're all of them together, actually. They're playful, they're practical and forward-looking, and they tell us where the wider food culture is heading. So big thank you to everyone. Everyone, all of you today who are participating in the summit will be able to access the top 10 trends video and the top 20 downloadable trends infographic, as well as the links to all of today's presentation. The replay links will be sent out the end of today's broadcast. In the meantime, and you're going to enjoy the rest of today's summit program, on behalf of Shakufa and I'd like to thank you all for listening, and I hope you found that thought-provoking. Hope it sparked some thoughts and ideas and made some connections to help you in working out how you shift the future of food and drink. For Trend Hub subscribers, I invite you, not now, but I invite you at the end of today's session to explore the rich, granular detail of our 26-27 trends book, the articles, the reports, the supporting videos. They're all on the Trend Hub platform as of today. So thanks very much for listening. Thanks for joining the session, Shakufa. I loved our chats as always for this year. Thanks ever so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.